Yes, so welcome everyone. As Bodil mentioned, today we're not talking about like tools or technology, but we're talking about culture. So we will be talking about people, also sometimes called messy, invisible stuff rather, that actually decides whether security works or fails. So in the background, that's why you can see a kind of onion layered type picture, because culture exists on many layers. Let me see. Oh, I think I've just been put in the spotlight. Can you all still see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Oh, okay. Oh, for me, the
And
view
you.
changed a moment. Yeah. All right. Great. Um, so let's talk cybersecurity culture. There are many different definitions. This makes it difficult to talk about it, but also interesting to talk about it. Um, but first, yeah, who am I? So, as Bodil mentioned, my name is Davide Guglielmi, and I help organizations with initiatives around cybersecurity awareness and culture. So, I try to turn it into something real, measurable, something that drives the right behaviors. So, I've spent time hacking security awareness platforms, also measuring security culture in environments. And I believe, and I will try to also present this, that it's essential to find or to ask the right questions. And currently, I'm actively consulting at a financial institution around their cybersecurity culture, and based in Belgium. So passionate about all things cybersecurity, psychology, good coffee. More on that later. Um, so from compliance to culture, from policies to people, let's zoom out and take a short look at the agenda. So we have around 40 minutes, let's say, and then we'll end with a demo by Bodil about habit surveys on CyberJuice. So first off, we'll talk a little bit about compliance, and then we'll talk more about how to think more in terms of people and actual behavior change. So we'll start with the human element, then walk through culture, then focus more on how to influence behavior, and mostly look at a couple of different models. So I'm going to promise you guys three things. We'll talk about how to move beyond training as a checkbox, but also how to model cybersecurity culture and how to model behavior change. So my goal is not to give you any tasks or anything, but more to give you more models, more lenses that you can use to see through. So this is going to be a bit of a interactive session. So I will ask you guys to take out your phones, and we'll start by the prompt. If you would have to describe your security culture, it's a bit unfair because we haven't gotten yet to what is security culture, but I will ask you to describe the culture in your organization using whatever comes to mind. So that can be like it's existing, it's non-existing. Wait 1 second, you need a QR code to scan or it will not work. Yes, so this will generate a word cloud on the screen from what you input, and it could be like, oh, it's rarely thought about, or it's present, it's second nature, it's strict. So take a moment to scan the code and enter a word, and then we should see some things pop up. We see lacking, we see dysfunctional. Okay, they're a bit negative, but hey, there's no judgment here. All right, we'll see if anyone else wants to add a response. Not discussed, on the radar. All right, let's. So this was a good one to get the brain fired up, and then we'll revisit on how we can actually think more about culture. First, we'll take one step back. Thank you for entering input here, and we'll look at what does compliance actually mean. Because, like, let's be real, we often start by chasing compliance as a first step, and then only afterwards So like that's the first piece. Like, let's make sure we have our things in order. So what does this mean in terms of security awareness and culture? So just a short overview. If we look at ISO 27001, like train all employees at least once a year, make sure they understand things like security policy, responsibilities. I'm going to keep it really high level here. Then DSEAL, set up an ongoing security awareness program, include basic training for all employees, involve leadership. The NIS2 directive, also pretty similar. So this is more to make the point, like it's a bit like going to the gym. Like people can go to the gym and get really different results. Like security programs are mostly built for auditors. Breaches, they don't happen because we missed an audit, but because some behavior took place or didn't took place. And you can meet all the checkboxes and still have a culture where passwords are shared or suspicious behavior is ignored. So we are going to take a look at how we can go beyond ticking the box, because you can tick the box in many different ways. So we'll take a look first at the human element. So as I mentioned, it's a bit of an interactive session. So I hope your phone has not yet been put away, because I will need your input once again. I have a very mundane example that we can all wrap our head around. And it's this one. It's the example of a young man with a simple McDonald's addiction. And so in this example, the man knows he has to change. He's not able to change, but he's about to change. And I'm going to ask your input on what do you think is most likely to make him change. And so there are two examples here, which is, so what will most likely persuade this man to stop eating McDonald's? Option A is learn more about processed foods. And option B is have a girlfriend who hates junk food. So I'm going to put the poll in high resolution here so you can scan it. And I'm curious to see what everyone thinks. So I see 3 votes for have a girlfriend who hates junk food and 1 vote for learn about processed foods. Now, it's important to mention there's no perfect answer here, because every human is different. Some people like focus more or take more action based on specific information, other ones emotion, but there's a trend line in human nature. Okay, 3 out of 3. Now it's 3-3. Interesting. Let's peek at the actual solution, or like the generalized truth, let's call it that. So the generalized truth here is, well, having a girlfriend who hates junk food is most likely to influence your behavior. So in this case, you can see the girlfriend in the back with her arms crossed with a clear opinion about the junk food. The thing is, in life, when someone has strong habits, like their standards tend to shift yours. And that's also how cybersecurity culture tends to work. So you can't just train something away with providing knowledge, because people tend to act more on beliefs, not just facts. So in this case, the guy can believe that the girlfriend likes him more if he changes his habit, and that can persuade him even more than just knowing how damaging processed foods are. So in this case, what did we actually learn about human nature? It's researched and established that attitudes actually have a higher impact on your behavior than knowledge. So behavior mostly follows beliefs, not just facts. Like if behavior alone would change, or if knowledge alone would change behavior, like no one would be smoking or texting while driving. And security kind of is the same. Like we have to shape what we believe, not just what people know. So if people believe that the CEO is not using the password manager, but they are being asked to use it themselves, like it conflicts, and those are like elements that influence your culture, if you want it or not. So let's take a look at some common claims. So a common claim about the human element is that it causes 80% or 95% of incidents. And there is definitely some truth to that. But we just learned about how attitudes influence behavior more than knowledge. So I want to explore our own attitudes regarding this belief. And just some other examples: human error is the main cause of 95% of breaches. Employees are often the weakest link in cybersecurity. But this attitude often leads to a sort of blame mentality where the end user is to blame for causing a whole lot of mess. And I want to zoom in on this attitude for a moment. So let's see if my screen will, yes, show it, the human firewall. I will assume everyone here has heard about it. Has someone here not heard about the human firewall? You can like raise the hand virtually or speak out or move your head. Then, so there's this conception that the human firewall is that humans, just like firewalls, make logic decisions. So a firewall is a logic-based system. So based on an address, it will allow something or not allow something. And this kind of makes the analogy with humans. But we just learned that attitudes influence our behavior. So even if you know you should not do something, maybe you woke up sick that day. Maybe you woke up sick of your job that day. So your attitude can change your behavior. So I would make the case that the concept human firewall is not that reliable. So I'm taking you on a small tangent or rant about the human element. So bear with me. I'm going to walk you through an example of a chain reaction. Something that's, so this visualizes an incident. And most of the time, the user that clicks on a phishing link that leads to a compromise gets the blame. So you see here on the left side, it says user gets phished. And I'm going to walk you through multiple things that have to go wrong here for an actual incident to take place. So let's say a user gets phished. An attacker steals the credential, but maybe the email account has MFA enabled on it. So, okay, that's fine. But then the attacker finds out that the same password is active on GitHub. And maybe GitHub lacks MFA. And after accessing GitHub, there are API keys in a private repo. And after exploring the API keys, there's no rate limiting, and the attacker can do a mass data extraction. This is all to show that if one phishing email can compromise your entire system, like the issue isn't just clicking, it's that the system allowed a single click to cause the amount of chaos. So that's multiple bad design decisions. Now, mind you, every design decision here where there's no rate limiting, or there's API keys in a private repo, they're also human decisions. So you could say the human element causes 95% of incidents. But the question is more, is it the human factor of the employee, of the IT manager, of the CEO, CTO? So there's human behavior on many different levels. And it's top down to like boil it down. And we'll explore a bit more of that. So if one phishing email can expose the company secrets, it's a systemic failure, and that's a culture problem, not a click problem. So to drive the point a bit more home, so culture outweighs clicks. And I make this point because there's a whole movement that has been active for a long time and still is about don't click on things. And I would say, let's shift this, because you want to control that whole chain reaction. And let's make this, please make it okay to click on things. And that's why I'm not such a fan of considering the human as a firewall, because it operates under different logic, not the kind of logic that we expect from a firewall. And so when you say the human factor is often the weakest link in cybersecurity, I would say the human factor is the most important link or attack vector in cybersecurity. So, and even if we do all agree that humans are the weakest link, then why would we keep blaming them instead of protecting them? if they are the weakest link. So to make this full circle, let's take the example of if we drive by car. So if we expect falling rocks on a highway, we install nets. If we expect a slippery road, we install guardrails. So it's time for you to provide some input again. The question I will ask is, which technical safeguards do you use in the organization to support your people in IT operations every day? So what do you have technically that makes it okay for your employees to click? So it could be like automatic breach notifications or multi-factor authentication. Let's see if everyone can access it. So anything that comes to mind that that exists, feel free to put it in the word cloud. So we have MFA. Yes, definitely a measure that can stop like 99% of common attacks. We have system monitoring. Important. They say by average it takes around 200 days to detect a breach. So you could say it's okay to be hacked. It's not okay to detect it late. Link scanning in emails. Yes, malware detection. All right, those are good examples of, just like we have the car safety, we have the airbags, we have the seat belts, least privilege. Yes. That would be like not allowing certain people to drive a truck. All right. Let's move on to the next one. I'll make sure to include these results in the slides when providing these afterwards. So we have talked about culture. I've asked input about culture, but how do we actually model culture? It's time to collect some more inputs from you guys. So there's a famous Peter Drucker quote that says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So my question to you is, can you measure cybersecurity culture? Yes or no? And let me get the live view up here. For people who have voted you can measure culture, to have voted you cannot measure culture. Let's see what the right answer is to this. So shortly put, yes, you can measure cybersecurity culture, but it's very nuanced because there are many different models for cybersecurity culture. So I will show you a model in a bit. It's important. I want to frame it and say, like, all models are wrong, some are useful. So keep that in mind. An example more broadly of culture is the good behaviors you reward minus the bad behaviors you tolerate. But I'll show you some cybersecurity culture definitions from established institutions. But you could say culture is like a mix of 100 unwritten rules, and you could write them all down, but it's kind of a pointless exercise, because then if you write 300 rules down, they evolve over time and you need to chase the entire thing. But you can take snapshots and measure it. So let's take a look at some definitions. So SANS Institute says that cybersecurity culture is the set of values shared by everyone in an organization that determine how people think about and approach security. if we look at ENISA, the EU Agency for Cybersecurity, says it's the knowledge, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, assumptions, norms, and values of people regarding cybersecurity and how they manifest in behavior. And then NIST, US-based, says that ideas, customs, and social behaviors of a group that influence its practices. So these definitions all kind of agree that culture shapes how people think and act. So that means if we ignore culture, we ignore the roots of what drives people to think and act. So I would make the case that you cannot really ignore it. It's part of your organization from day one, even if it's invisible. So to dive into an example of how you can measure it, we'll take a look at coffee culture. So let's take this as an example. Like, we know different countries have different coffee cultures. I have no idea about the Danish one, I must be honest, but I do have an idea of the Italian one. So in Italy, if you order a cappuccino after lunch, like, you're a weirdo. It's like there's milk in it. Why would you drink it after? Like, it's quirky, unwritten rules, and it can change, but you cannot ignore it because it will ruin your business, and we'll zoom in on it. So I'm showing a picture. Yes. Who knows what this place is? I see some eyebrows. I'll say it's a coffee place of a well-known franchise, and you will not guess it.
Is
I
it
think
McDonald's?
no, but you're like in the domain of well-known franchises. It's Starbucks, but it's a so. Would anyone have an idea of what the last country in Europe was to have a Starbucks?
Italy?
Yes, Italy. So we are looking at the Starbucks like roastery. It's like a concept of theirs in Milan, Italy. And this opened in 2018. And so by contrast, I researched the first one was in the UK in 98. And in Denmark, there was one in 2007. So it took 11 years for Starbucks to penetrate the Italian market with the first Starbucks. And so why is that? Starbucks understood, or like was confronted with a hard truth. So here comes my second Peter Drucker quote, which is that, yeah, first look, so there's the tiramisu and the espresso, like not your typical Starbucks experience. But so culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if your strategy is selling €7 pumpkin spice lattes, but you have a culture full of Italians that want cheap ristrettos multiple times a day, you're going to have a hard time. So that's why the environment here is a totally different one than how they cater to a US audience, for example. So the same holds true for any company in cybersecurity. If your strategy is we are going to use or put resources towards password management, but the culture does not allow this because there are totally different habits, and people work on the field, for example, and don't even have a mobile phone, or just to give an example, then the culture will eat this strategy for breakfast. So we've talked about culture. Let's take a look at a concrete model about cybersecurity culture. So I mentioned all models are wrong, some are useful. In this case, I present you the 7 dimensions of cybersecurity culture. It's a model made by KnowBe4. So one of those dimensions is behavior. We see it over here. And then you have what I know, what I see, what I hear, what I say, and what I feel. So what I know is my own awareness, my own knowledge. Then what I see is what I observe around me, maybe some signs, some posters, some systems, the norms that are actually around me. Then what I hear is what I'm told, the rules that are in place, the policies, the instructions, the actual compliance. And then what I say is, what voice do I have? How is communication? Can you openly communicate about certain things, or are there things that do not allow that? And then lastly here, what I feel. So what's my own emotional alignment? Do I think it's fair what I'm being asked to do? Do I think it's reasonable? And so it connects to, on the right side, cognition, norms, compliance, communication, and attitudes. And in between, there's a dimension of responsibilities. So those are the 7 dimensions as put forward by KnowBe4. And I will use this model as an example of how we can take a snapshot of coffee culture. A very subjective one, but I'm just going to illustrate the example to show that how you don't have to overcomplicate it. So let's look at an easy example. So it can be very subjective. You can look at how many milliliters are in an espresso, but you can also ask someone, how do you feel about a coffee in the evening? And asking someone about their feelings is more subjective, although like you can quantify it, but it's a human experience. But let's take a specific example here. So I just made a coffee culture scan, and if we can map this, like technically we can do the same for security, and I have done the same for security. So using this model, let's say the norms. Everyone knows it's okay to grab a coffee even during working hours. So I've scored it 82. Like the scoring, bear with me here. Behaviors, people regularly go for coffee chats, spontaneous and planned. So 74. Responsibilities, a few coffee champions exist, but like no one is the real owner. So 58, like in a corporate environment, no owner, bad. Attitudes, it's a good vibe around it. People see it as a bonding ritual, 91. Cognition, most people know where like the good Nespresso machine is, but not everyone. So we'll score the knowledge 76. Then communication, there are frequent invites like in Slack or in the hallway. So let's say 79. And compliance, like some people think it's okay to drink at the desk, the other one, some people don't. So mixed signals, it's not clear, 35. So this is just made by myself. Like if you do it organization wide, you could ask everyone questions around these dimensions and get a more reliable snapshot. But this is just to like to give the example. All right, let's move beyond how to model culture. I said I would promise an example of how to model culture, but also how to influence behavior. So I am going to provide you with a model on that. So I do need to give context that it's a very complex and deep topic, and we can only like scratch the surface of this. And like how to influence behaviors, like there are things like reducing friction, having social proof, that are very important. But here I'm going to zoom in on one specific model, a way you can think about behavior going into the future. So I'm going to show a short fragment for the seconds about seatbelts, because I think password managers are kind of the new seatbelts of today. Today, nobody questions seatbelts. It's dialed in. We have it completely not biohacked, but we've hacked our own systems to like not ever think about seatbelts anymore. But that didn't used to be the case. So we'll take a short look on the man that's being interviewed here and what's his reasoning behind wearing a seatbelt. So I'm just like double checking if I also have audio here. Like, tell me if you guys hear the video.
Before the new law.
Yes.
Yes, we hear it. Yeah.
All right. Still hear it?
And now we don't hear it.
Okay. Yeah, it was playing through my speakers. I'm just going to let it play through my speakers. In that way, you can hear it. So let's play this again. So I'm being chased by the demo gremlin. 1 second.
Before the new law came into force, only about 4 out of every 10 motorists regularly used a seatbelt. But during this morning's rush hour in London, the vast majority of drivers and front seat passengers were securely fastened. It seems the fear of prosecution was a greater incentive to belt up than all those previous seatbelt campaigns with their appeals to reason. And the government will now be hoping for a big reduction in the number of people killed or seriously injured in traffic accidents. Good morning, I see you're wearing your seatbelt today.
That's correct, yes.
Is this simply because of the law?
Indeed, I never worn it before. I prefer to be free when I'm driving, but I'm aware that the law aren't going to enforce things today, so that's why I'm wearing it.
Sorry. But not everyone remembered the need to click this morning. Hello, Matt.
To clunk and click. That was a big campaign back then. Let me see. Yes, so I give this example because if you heard the man say, he said, I prefer to be free when I'm driving. I guess that's free to die in an accident or something. It's by today's standards, things have changed drastically. So how can we dissect this behavior? Let's take a look at how to dissect it and how you can apply the same thing with regards to a password manager. So this is a diagram of the BJ Fogg behavior model. And on the y-axis, you'll see motivation. And on the x-axis, you'll see the ability. And then you have a third element, which is the prompt. So you can be motivated to wear a seatbelt. You can have the ability to wear a seatbelt. But if it's really hard to do and you have to get something out of the trunk before you can do it, then it's going to be likely that you do not take action. So let's add the prompt element in here. So a prompt that's over here where the motivation is high and it's easy enough to do, and they all converge and you can exhibit the behavior. If it's not the case, then let's say the motivation, seatbelts were not put into law, so low motivation, people didn't wear it because, well, rather be free to drive without a seatbelt. So this is a Fogg behavior model, and it says that a behavior equals a motivation times the ability times the prompt. So let's zoom in for a moment. Let's look at the behavior. People wear their seatbelts. So we've talked a bit about the motivation. So what is the motivation of drivers in this example? Safety? Not really. The man really more had like a legal compliance motivating factor. And social norms. I think today your passenger is going to look really strange or weird at you when you don't wear a seatbelt. Then there's the ability. How easy is it to do? Low effort, shouldn't disrupt your driving. And then the prompt, well, we all have a beeping sound, and depending on how luxurious your car is, the beeping sound may be a bit more comfortable, but it will always be there. So let's transpose this towards password managers, and I will ask your input. Important, yes, they need to converge at the same time for it to be really effective. So let's take the example of password managers. Someone needs to sign up for something new, Notion, Slack, Confluence, whatever it is, and they need to create a password, and you ideally want them to use the password manager. How can we allow these three to converge? So we have people would use a password manager. What would you say motivates a person to use a password manager? You can write in the chat or say out loud or abstain from replying, and I will provide you the answer, but I will give you a moment if you...
I would say it's to not have to make up new passwords all the time.
Yes, that's, you highlight convenience there.
Yeah.
Indeed. Then
I see Vincent also wants to say something.
No, I was kind of the same. I mean, the biggest reason I use the password manager is I had like 300 accounts. I was getting nuts without password manager. It was not even about the passwords, to be honest.
Yes, but I could imagine someone saying, I know 2 passwords by heart. I would have no issue like reusing them 300 times. Of course, from a cybersecurity perspective, that's
We also have
faster.
in the chat, I love new tech, so trying one was fun.
Uh-huh.
So
That's
curiosity.
Curiosity. Okay, I would say that's a nice but less common motivating factor. Let's see. Typically, we have convenience. Yes, especially mandatory usage. From experience, I have talked with so many people that still rather use their own system of like 4 to 5 passwords they have in their head, depending on the context, than switch to a password manager. But hey, that's just the way it is. So I think mandatory usage still remains a big one. And then, well, safety, I should have maybe put this between brackets, because safety, I think only cybersecurity professionals tend to use that as a motivating factor. All right, what about ability? What enables a person to use a password manager?
That someone installs it and shows them how to use it. That's my experience from real life.
Yes, that's a very good one, actually. Yeah, having instructions. I don't believe it's in there. I'll show some examples. So easy to use. So let's say you can use Face ID instead of putting in your 20-character master password. But your example fits into the easy to use category, because if someone does not show how to use it, it's not that easy to use. Not always, but depending. And then also low effort. Like, it shouldn't matter if you have an iPhone or an Android device. If you allow multiple operating systems in your company, then the same needs to hold true for your password manager, or it will be doomed to fail. Then a prompt. What does a good prompt look like? I will skip to this one and just say it needs to be an easy pop-up. So besides easy, it also should have like a logical frequency. So if you need to use it 20 times a day, that's not ideal. So if you can automate your logins for most part, that reduces the amount of prompts you need, and it will solidify the behavior better, or like people will not get what they call MFA fatigue, where they just will confirm a prompt because it's the 21st of the day. All right, so let's recap some things that we have learned and looked at towards the session. Again, they need to converge at the same time, very important. So 5 takeaways I want to leave with everyone is: first, attitudes drive action more than knowledge does. So think about attitudes rather than knowledge. What is the thing, someone believes around the subject instead of what do they know? Second, use the 7 dimensions. Try it and dissect some things in terms of norms, communications, responsibilities, behaviors, attitudes, and cognition. Then thirdly, if you think about a behavior, think in terms of motivation, ability, and prompt. Because if someone isn't doing the secure thing you want them to do, highly likely that one of those 3 elements is broken. Then 4, people are the primary attack surface. So ask yourself, like, do your systems actually protect them or only blame them? And then 5, think about culture as the worst behavior you tolerate. So just like a country tolerated having no seatbelts and no law around it, what are practices that you are ignoring yourself as a leader? Because it does trickle down and have an enormous influence. So if you take one thing, like, culture isn't like what's written down, but it's what we tolerate. Like, it's what we reinforce, what we ignore, what we believe. day to day. Then lastly, I will end by providing you guys with a simple list. I call it kind of a gut check around security culture. Bodil shared some case study with me around habit surveys, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But for the people that may watch this afterwards or don't have access to CyberJuice platform and want to inquire more about cybersecurity culture, I have used the input, Bodil, from your case study also as inspiration for this, and it's a simple 18 question. So there are 18 questions that if you can answer them honestly, you'll probably know where to focus on or what needs focus with regards to cybersecurity culture. So to give an example, it's where do I find my own information security policy, or I use a password manager for my own work accounts. I sometimes use apps or tools for work that are not officially approved. Like if you do it, your team is probably copying you. Then 4, my manager or team leads talks about security in a practical and helpful way. And 5, some open reflections, like what's one thing that would make it easier for you to practice secure habits? Or is there like an actual policy or a procedure that confuses you? So if you want to inquire more, try and ask these questions to yourself. So there's an age-old adage, like if a bear gets one guy, it's not going to keep running to get the other. So you don't need like the strongest culture. You just need to be better than another environment, so not the worst. And it's a tricky subject because like I like to compare cybersecurity with insurances. Like you can get infinite insurances, but at a certain point, the return on investment, like it goes down and it taxes your system more than the benefits you get out of it. So it's an active evolving thing to know where to focus on in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of our culture. So I hope these questions can help you do that a bit more. I've included a simple QR code in this. If someone's watching this and wants to have the list in a Notion page, you can just scan it and get started on that. So
thank you for such an amazing, insightful talk, and all the analogies with coffee made it really fun and easy to follow. So I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did too. And I see some thumbs up here on my screen. And good presentation here. So people really liked it. And there are so many goodies in there. So I'm sure there's also going to be people watching the recording afterwards and the slides. Thank you so much for that. It's hard to come after this, actually.